how do you fix the fact that if you look at LA as like the best example because of the sprawl, you can find like a 10 square mile radius that is literally nothing but Chinese people that speak Chinese. They don't speak English. You go to a restaurant, they don't speak English. The signs are in Chinese. What do you do about that? What do you do about the fact that on this part of LA, it's all in Spanish? What do you do about the fact that in this part of LA, it's in like like Azerbaijani or whatever? Like it's everything everywhere. And you're just going to keep seeing that balkanization.
Yeah, so this is again where I think I differ from other people, where I think that integration has to be an intentional governmental effort.
Brother, the place is called Chinatown. Like the place is literally called Chinatown. What? Huh? And I'm pretty sure most people in Chinatown, all the Chinese people that live there, are all people who know how to speak some degree of English. Also, do you know how boring it is if America had, like, no Chinese people? Where the fuck would all the Chinese food be? Where else would Jewish people get Chinese food? On Christmas? Huh? Have you ever thought about that? Nerd.
And what I mean by that is, so my experience is a little bit different. I do live in a fairly cosmopolitan purple area. I live in Central Florida, but in my cosmopolitan Central Floridian area, I went to a law enforcement academy, and the law enforcement academy was 80% Hispanic. Like every single last name was Gutierrez, Herrera, this, that, the other, right? It was all Hispanic. And yet out of a class of 30 people, 2 people spoke Spanish. And that's because, yeah, their parents like came over, they only spoke the language, they worked their jobs, they stayed in their ethno-religious enclaves, but their kids went to American public school. And as a result of going to American public school and being born here, they learned English, they learned American civics, they, you know, wanted to be a part of their community, they grew up on American pop culture and all that.
Yeah, Billy Bob's fried rice. John Smith's General So chicken. John Smith's orange chicken. Oh my god. Kind of
stuff. And so as a result, like the Spanish speaking police instructors were
like, bitch, how many more Denny's could you handle? And Five Guys. Five Guys and Denny's. Five Guys and Denny's on every single block. Yeah, that's right. Five Guys and Denny's on every single block. Fucking kill me, okay? There's no fucking way you're in support of that, all right? I refuse to believe it.
We're giving the class shit because they were saying how valuable being bilingual would be in this job, and yet the Hispanics in Central Florida were so anglicized and so integrated that they were missing a critical skill for law enforcement. So that's where I just think that we're probably living in different Americas.
Do you think the Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan are like fundamentally American because they like Kanye West and speak English?
No, but I think that if you give it a few decades,
bitch, Kanye West's best fucking hits are some of the best fucking shit to ever come out of this godforsaken planet, okay? Don't you dare fucking roast Graduation like that, okay? All right? I'm not here to hear the Graduation slander, okay? All right? We Major is so fucking good, okay? And even if you don't like Graduation, all right? Listen, that makes no sense. You're a groiper. Even Nick Fuentes loves fucking, like, even Nick Fuentes loves fucking Kanye.
You give it a few decades, or a century, I think they could be.
Where in Central America are they from, by the way? Sorry to interrupt, but I'm just curious, Connor. And by the way, Connor, you don't have to mute. It turns out that sound was from somewhere else. But do you know where in Central America or South America a lot of them are from?
Oh, yeah, I would say easily probably 10 or 20% of them were Cuban, 10 or 20% of them were Puerto Rican, and the rest were Mexican. So it's probably like 50, 60% Mexican, 10 or 20% Caribbean, 10 or 20% different kind of Caribbean.
Late registration? Oh, sorry, my bad. Late registration. Okay, never mind. Maybe a Graduation isn't my favorite album then.
I would say that the Caribbeans seem to Puerto Rico is obviously an American territory, but Puerto Rico and Cubans seem to actively want to integrate. And I would say Mexicans, it's like a coin flip. They either love America and want to integrate, or they're like, fuck you, you colonized us. I'm indigenous. It's like a 50-50 coin flip.
I noticed, by the way, this comment over here from one of your people, Connor. LOL, what a regarded question. Yeah, I'm happy they're being very careful about this stuff. But when it comes to something like that, though,
chat. Lev's nice.
When it comes to something like that, though, it is interesting because it almost feels like, now they're talking about the differences between people. That's not very good. So it feels like your audience is a little bit more sensitive to that kind of thing, even though I think it is important to take a look at these different cultures, how exactly they react to the United States, to integration, all of that, because these are all very important questions, and it matters as far as how long it would take to integrate certain people more than others.
Well, I've talked to so I lived in California for a bit, and I do spend a lot of time on the online political debate sphere. So I'll concede to Bumbadum that there are liberals and there are progressives and there are leftists who effectively take the political position that, like, well, we don't have to force any kind of integration because, that's racist or whatever. I think that's stupid. I'm sorry that you live in a shitty state that takes that on as policy. But I would say that's not the entire.
Look, all I'm going to say, Flashing Lights extended orchestral intro goes so fucking hard. You have no idea.
This is federal policy for like the last 30 years, and this only changed this last election.
Oh, Flashing Lights graduation? Oh, okay.
With Trump's really, really, really unfortunately staffed administration, the standards for like how to even like getting people to integrate, they've been so low.
Oh, fuck.
And even the fact that the legal systems were not enforced means that these people had no need to integrate. So when we have 20 million people, or how many
I love Wonder
under the Biden administration come in illegally, right? Who knows how many came in? None of these people integrated, and there was no need to. There's no want to. There's no requirement to. None of them ever will. This was totally allowed, and this is and then you see in the legal efforts, it still happens.
But okay, this is where I feel like
Oh my god, what if this guy is just like really insecure about his like queer voice or some shit? Maybe that's why. Like, I wonder if it's like, I wonder if just some people are just like they have like homoerotic voices, but like they're trying to deepen it,
I'm not trying to overly stereotype and feel like you know what? I'll skip that part of the comment.
I like the voice.
This is where I feel like statistics don't necessarily bear out what you're saying. And what I mean by that is that if you look at criminality in the United States of America, effectively what happened in the pre-World War II era was we were at like a relatively high level of homicide.
Oh, I meant Radiant. Okay, fuck you. I'm kidding, joking. I love you. No, but a soy voice is a good voice. Like, these are the voices I could actually stand to listen to, right? If you care how this guy's voice mostly sound like, I pitched it up. Oh my god, GGG chat, finally pulling.
Totally, fundamentally different world. So the city I live in is let's say one of these large dystopian West Coast cities. 30 years ago, this city looked completely different. You did not see signs in Star Wars languages. You did not have the type of activity and behavior. You did not. You could go down the street and you could simply hear the language of your nation. This is not what you experience anymore in many American cities, and this is the case everywhere. The demographic change across this nation has been so fast. There's unbelievable. It is completely. This is why you and I live in different worlds. Is because you and I grew up in such different worlds. The world that when I got to form all of my worldly beliefs after age 10, because I'm so ahead of the curve. But in this world.
In crime in the United States of America, it was the Prohibition era. So we were around like 10 per 100,000 homicides. And it was a time of like gangsters and violence and death and murder. That was very popular. Then it looks like we kind of peaked out around 1940, and it looks like all of America went to war. And then it seems like through the 50s and 60s, Americans were sick of war. So we kind of have like a post-war lull. And this is idyllic America, where we're at 5 per 100,000 homicides. We're actually largely segregated. You know, this is before integration. This is before the Civil Rights Act. We also don't have a very large Hispanic population, because I think we had pretty strict immigration controls in reference to, correct me if I'm wrong, the Hart-Celler Act. But then what you see is a spike in crime. And the spike in crime correlates with the Hart-Celler Act and mass immigration from Central America, South America, and Asia. But this also correlates with the drug war. And so we see that peak out in the 90s. But what ends up happening is, probably since 92 or 94, we start using the era of mass incarceration, modern medical technology, video games, and the internet as distractions. And you basically see the homicide rate and a lot of crime effectively cut in half back down to the 50s and 60s level. And so I have to kind of like, I kind of have to poke you on this, is, are you really seeing like the fraying of the social fabric and the destruction of America? Or are we kind of in the same level of peace and tranquility that we were in the 50s and 60s, but you have a smartphone so you can see every grisly homicide that happens in the world?
I mean, maybe you could make that argument. I think you could make that argument.
That is the gayest one. Maybe you can make that argument, but like, okay, stop.
And correct me if I'm wrong. If like, what is it? 2/3? Is it 1/3 or 2/3 of all police precincts in the United States of America don't report their crime data to the FBI anymore? This has been going on since 2022.
I don't know if that's true.
I know in New York, it's
I've used the UCR for decades.
In New York, 3/4 of their precincts do not report their crime data to the FBI. And so, like, this then brings into question, what even is the data that we have when we look at crime data even accurate? And then you have to look at currently states with certain majorities of populations that have done a lot of pro-crime policies and just don't prosecute and don't put people in jail. And even then, not even just in pro-crime states, but in the cities and red states that do this, right? So, for example, Dallas is a great example, where the DA in Dallas said that he will not prosecute anyone that steals something from a store that's less than $750. The same DA who straight up has let like an illegal immigrant who admitted to murdering somebody, stabbing them like 8 times and lighting their body on fire, he gave him 8 months of probation. So
there is another example I want to bring up, which is very recent, about Kendra Briggs, who was apparently a Biden-appointed judge who gave no jail time to the teens responsible for attacking the Doge employee Big Balls. So if you guys recall what happened.
He deserves to be bullied.
Happened to him. So they got let out on, what was it?
It's fucking Big Balls.
Baylor, what do you call it when people are, I'm so dumb right now. What do you call it when people, probation. Thank you so much. They were let on probation. And so that would be another example of what you're talking about, right?
But no, not really. What I'm saying is I think the institutions that even present this data are so far gone and so bad across so much of this country that I don't know if you can really even trust these numbers anymore. And this is wildly, like, it's super, super concerning to me. Like, when you see, like, like Newsom, the account, he's been going off being like, California has a better crime rate than Texas or Alabama or, like, Florida and, like, all these other states. And you go and look, and it's like, oh, cool, LA County Police Precinct just doesn't report, like, their crime data to the FBI. New York doesn't report their crime data. New York City Policing doesn't report their crime data to the FBI. You sit there and you look at this, and you're like, what is...
Big Balls literally got beaten up by a 15-year-old girl. Oh my god, really? Like, was the girl like obese or something? Like, did she accidentally sit on him or?
Like, I want to believe maybe that it's just the phones are making us crazy, because it's a really great, easy answer, and it would make so many things easier to just be like, okay, if we just put the phones away, then maybe we could all be happy. But then I go out and I see with my eyes, like, no, I don't think so. I think everything is actually just worse than it was like 30 years ago.
Well, okay, so hold on. Then there's another thing that I'm gonna throw your way. Okay, so nostalgia is a motherfucker. Okay. And so what I would say is like I idealize the 1990s because I was born in the late 80s. And I do think the 90s was awesome for a lot of reasons. I think a lot of the music was good. I think some of the cars were cool. I think a lot of the media was cool. I think the action movies were awesome, all that kind of stuff. But I do also have to realize that in like 1994, like 2 years before like a bunch of my favorite music and favorite movies were released, it was one of the most violent years in like American,
Yeah,
American
I'm not going to
history.
deny. I don't
But-
think, and by the way, I don't think that crime in the U.S. is necessarily worse than it was in the 90s. I just have a massive doubt for whatever the numbers are because I don't think any of these institutions can be trusted because I think they are so occupied by.
Oh, great. Okay. What is it like? What is the fallacy called when you don't think there's an objective reality? Like there has to be a name for this, right? Like if you think that there is no objective reality, like okay, dude, no objective reality. I got it.
Evil people.
Well,
Retardation.
okay, so hold on. I was going
Yeah.
to come your way though with a little bit of a concession. I think that this is going to be where, again, I'm going to defer from some other people. I had, as an example, in Central Florida, and I do love my home state. I do love the area that I live. But we had a female DA take over in Orlando, and she changed the dog fighting rules. No fucking idea why, but she changed it from 2 characteristics to 5.
Yep.
And then one of my friends who worked for Orange County Sheriff's Office, he found a guy who had 5. He had dogs, he had steroids, he had, cages.
Yeah.
He had this.
But he had a great relationship with Twitch, so everything was fine.
Well, in that, hold on. So you're kind of joking, like, like a relationship with like people in power is how you get away with shit. But unironically, that's what ended up happening was the DA dismissed the dogfighting case. Even though it had met her bar for the standards of evidence necessary in order to do a prosecution. And like, dude, I'm a white person. I fucking love dogs. So that just like, infuriated me to no
You love fucking dogs?
end. And I'm also thinking about like, what kind of culture are you creating where
Okay.
you catch somebody red-handed committing a fucking evil crime and then you let them go? And so I think that the balance between our perspectives is probably correct, where I just want, what I'm trying to do with my content, what I'm trying to do with my perspective is I'm trying to unironically reach people like Bumbadum and say like, hey, this isn't the apocalypse. Like it's not over. You can still find a nice
So
girl. You
over.
can still get
We are
married.
so not back.
No, you can find a nice white girl. You can get pregnant. You can have kids. You can live in a good community. You can do all this shit.
Here's what this may come down.
That
Okay,
doesn't mean
but
that there isn't fucked up shit going on that we need to
Okay.
take care of.
okay, here's what all of these conversations end up coming down to. It's the concern that people like Bumbadum have that in several decades, there's going to be people who, yes, like they could speak English and they're into American culture and all of that, but if they came from cultures which were more high time preference, then that high time preference will be retained no matter the education, no matter all the efforts that are done, unless we have a magic button that gives every single kid growing up in America a tutor, like a personal tutor to bring them through all of these rigorous situations. Like his approach, if I'm not mistaken here, is that it would just take an extraordinary amount of work if we are talking about not just integration, but if we're talking about enough of an emphasis on changing enough people that are going to be in positions of power in 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, so that they would be low time preference, right? Like, would that be a good goal?
Can you articulate that for me though? Just because high time versus low time, my
Yes.
guess is like ADD and incapable of focusing on long form necessary tasks.
Living in the
That's my
moment.
guess.
Living in the moment. That would be a good way to phrase it. And I think what the concern here is that if you look around, a lot of cultures in the world, a lot of people are living in the moment. They may not be thinking as far in advance in terms of, how their society runs, which is okay, but we don't really want that quality. So number one, is that necessarily the case? And number two, if that is the case, how do we fix that?
Yeah, I got a quote for you after Bumbadum responds.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
Bumbadum,
think-
go for it.
I think. Oh, I kind of asked this earlier. When it was kind of a poke at kind of a joke, which was that do we consider the Muslims that have essentially colonized Dearborn, Michigan, American because maybe they listen to Kanye or Drake, and maybe the kids of the people that were brought in by Obama speak English. And his answer was, yeah, maybe in like 100 years they might be American, like they might all speak English and they might all integrate. And I'm like, I'm not going. First of all, I'm not going to cede my nation to the idea that maybe in 100 years, first of all, this one religion in the world that has had such unbelievable occupancy and violence and has managed to maintain it through their
Oh my god, Groypers are so boring, dude. Oh my god. Dude. Can't they just like adopt new talking points for once? They're so boring, dude. It's the same points I've heard over and over and over and over and over. Oh my god. Oh, I knew it. Oh, anti-Islam. It must be Lin with the voice changer. Okay.
insane beliefs of
Not just a
first
religion,
cousin
political
marriage.
system. Political
But it's-
system. That's an
listen,
important
that's it. The other-
caveat here.
The other interesting aspect about it, of course, is the proclivities towards first cousin marriage, which will then create all sorts of intelligence issues. I don't think these people would ever integrate, and the way that they get here is not indicative of them wanting to integrate. This is indicative of people that want to colonize, and then we see it happen in Dallas. We see the Epic City, that whole thing, an Islamic center community. You know, these are people that are not looking to integrate; they're looking to colonize, and I don't think that it's appropriate that the land of my people, of that my parents, my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, I have 6 generations going back here, that I would say, you know what, I'll risk what you guys left to me to see if these people will do something that none of them have ever done in ever recorded history.
Well, okay, so yeah, so hold on. In 16, I basically decided I was never Trump all the way back in 15. And while I was never Trump, I was not able to vote for Hillary Clinton. Number one, because I think she's like a lizard person who eats babies in order to like extend her lifespan. But also because she effectively said at the peak, in my opinion, of like ISIS jihadist terrorism in Europe, and immediately after the Pulse nightclub shooting, she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna bring in 200,000 people from Syria." And it was like, why? Like, what the fuck? Why?
She's also evil. She's terrible.
So the point is, like, I'm a
What?
little bit more Islamophobic than the average liberal. Let's put it that way. But that being said, through relationships, I have a few relationships with a few Muslim folks. I would say that Islam is a dualistic religion. And what effectively you need to do in order to get a peaceful version of Islam is that the bar for being Muslim is actually super low. It's like, believe in God, the last day, that Muhammad is his messenger, do good works, and then go on the Hajj if you can afford it. That's like the 5 bars for being considered Muslim, right? And then, but after that, of course, what happens if you actually read the Quran? The first half of the Quran, little edgy, gets a little spicy every now and then. Second half of the Quran is super spicy, super fucked up. And like from a historical perspective, that's because, Muhammad spent the second half of his life at war. And so like a lot of his passages are about conflict and war and conquering people and all that kind of stuff. Well, the easiest way that I've found peaceful Muslims translate that is they're like, oh, well, it's within the historical context of war, therefore.
I feel like this isn't like the fundamental rules of things isn't a good way to judge the way that people practice the religion today, right? Like, this wouldn't be a good argument against Groypers, because Groypers can just simply point out that a lot of the way that a lot of people like practice these kinds of religions is in a violent way, right? Like, you would have to look at the way that these like Muslims or Christians or Jews practice their religion, people of the book, right? And what percentage practices them in this way or that way or this way or that way, right? Because if we were to look at parts of the Bible, there's plenty of parts in the Bible that is completely fucked up. All right, the Bible's anti-gay as well, but there are Christians out there who support gay marriage. So you have to look at, you can't look at like the source text. I don't know, dude. Counterpoints is always such a fucking pedantic, and he's so lame. Ugh. Oh, we have to look at Tito's teachings and the original holy text.
Since I'm at peace with my neighbors, and in the beginning part, Islam says, only God can know where people are going to heaven. Only God can.
You mean like God drowning everyone on page 4? Exactly.
Know what's going on. Therefore, it's up to each man in order to choose his religion. That's like an early surah. They kind of just emphasize the first half of it rather than the second half of it. And so, do I want? I think there's 2 billion Muslims in the world. Do I want 2 billion Muslims to move to the United States tomorrow? Absolutely the fuck not. Do I think that we can keep an under 5% population of Muslims and they can integrate into American society? Yeah, probably.
Connor, I gotta get in here.
Well, it's literally self-selection. Like, it's literally self-selection, right? Because why the fuck, like the people who practice Sharia law, the people who are truly passionate about Sharia law, why the fuck would they move to the United States of fucking the America of the United? Why would they do that? If I was a Muslim and I was like super passionate about it, I would see America as fucking decrepit and evil. I would never want to go there. Of course not. Right? The issue solves itself automatically. Like, why the fuck would you ever worry about like a mass immigration of Sharia, like strict Sharia abiding Muslims? That's retarded.
You're more Islamophobic than me.
I gotta get in here, man. This is very important. So from the research that I've been doing, there is this thing called abrogation. What abrogation means is that all of the people who are responsible for Islamic jurisprudence and all these various, Hanafi, Hanbali, Maliki, whatever the hell, all these people have agreed that the later passages are much more important than the earlier ones, and if you were to choose between one and the other, it's always going to be the later ones.
No, the Hadith are a fucking nightmare, man. Like al-Bukhari or whatever.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the Hadith.
Also, nobody gives a fuck about the religion in the first place. Like they'll just like twist any holy text words to the way that they want, selectively, cherry picking, and ignoring the parts that are bad. Because reasons, conveniency, degeneracy. All right? Like, how many people are like actually like strict people who follows the text to its exact? Monks?
Like, forget the Hadith for now. I'm just talking about the Quran and the fact that the later passages supersede the earlier passages. And here's the problem. If you have like 5 tourists who come here from Saudi Arabia, obviously it's not a problem. But when you have a culture that's within, Dearborn, Michigan, or whichever city, they are, to their credit, they treat their political system.
Well, you could. Is that a reference to Nation of Islam?
Which is what it is. It's not just a religion. It's a political system. They treat it with a lot of respect. All this jurisprudence that gets passed down from master to disciple, yada, 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 they're not going to get rid of that if there's already enough people there in order to keep everybody in check. And that's the real problem here. If you have tourists, that's one thing. If you have people keeping other people in check, that's another thing.
But here would be my argument. And I will argue that like hope isn't a plan. Right. And I'm kind of doing a lot of hoping when it comes to Islam. So I'll admit that. However, I would say that we've seen things that don't make a lot of sense with a strict interpretation of Islam within the past like decade or so. Like the previous Saudi king, the one before the one that we have right now, was funding madrasas internationally, was, promoting fundamentalist Islam internationally was even paying for madrasas and religious conservative schools in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. And then the new prince seems to be, relatively speaking, like a modernizer. And so while he's still Muslim, he still wears the, conservative garb. He still murdered a journalist. People in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. I've heard enough. We're raiding right into. Listen, we are raiding right into a RuneScaper. Thank you guys so much for watching. Kill me. All right. Hopefully Steven comes back soon. Inshallah. Okay. Actually, no. No, don't let him come back. I need my viewership. Okay. For the love of God.